All right, guys, that's the end of day 2 of legal tampering, and it was pretty quiet. Pretty quiet. Not just for the Seahawks. Honestly, for the Seahawks, I think you could call this very quiet, like silent. Like you barely heard a thing from this team. The biggest announcement we got today was that there's going to be a press conference with Pete and John tomorrow. So that's how the day went for the Seahawks. Kind of a quiet day for the NFL in general too. Not a whole lot of movement, not a whole lot of big free agents brought in, not a lot of big contracts. One or two, like the Randy Gregory one, but it was a pretty quiet day, pretty chill day. So let's try to figure this out. Let's try to put this together. So basically, the only thing the Seahawks actually did today was tender, I think it was 7, maybe 8 restricted free agents. And then they lost DJ Reed. And we also got word that the team was not interested in and never made any offer for Deshaun Watson. And also, while we're at it, you're looking around at the list of free agents and you're seeing guys that seem like they would just be perfect for this team to bring in. Like Brian Bulaga shuck free today. And this is a guy who hasn't been healthy in 2 years, but absolutely could at least compete with Jake Curhan in training camp. He gets released today. You know you're going to be able to get him on a pretty cheap deal because he's been injured the last 2 years. He's barely played. And you know you need to bring in some kind of right tackle veteran to compete with Jake Curhan. And I'm not hearing so much as a hint of interest in this team. So the group of restricted free agents we tendered, that doesn't really tell us anything about the team's plans. Like this team, they would be doing that if they're rebuilding, if they're reloading, whatever they're doing. Those are all reasonable moves. Like keeping Ryan Neal on less than $1 million. All right. Keeping Brian Monet on less than $1 million. Any team would do that. So I don't think any of that stuff really means anything. So those moves cannot tell me what this team is thinking about doing in 2022, but it's more the lack of activity than the activity. So looking at the fact that we are now sitting here watching other teams do things while we don't, and I want to stress, there's still time. We still have 3 days left this week. We still have plenty of time after this week is over, honestly. But as of right now, doesn't really look like the Seahawks are in to compete this year in 2022. So I'm trying to figure out what the plan is here. And after taking a look at some of the deals we've just made and some of the deals that we have, I'm going to take my best guess at what the long-term plan for the Seahawks is right now, because I think that it's very easy to look at things and just assume that there is no plan and the team just does whatever they feel like doing at any given moment. Like there's a certain amount of just insanity at play here where it feels like you're hiring a new GM every day or even every hour. But that's probably not actually the case. And when I was looking at what we were doing, when I was looking at these decisions we made where we bring back Quandre Diggs on a big contract, where we bring back Al Woods, give Will Dissly like 3 times more than he's worth, and I'm trying to figure out what the plan is here, my first thought was, this moron thinks he can win with Drew Lock. Right? Because according to reports, Seattle was never interested in Deshaun Watson, never made a real offer, and maybe you could say that's because they knew he wouldn't be interested. It's coming out that apparently Watson wants to play in a city with warm weather, doesn't want to play in a city where it rains all the time. I guess that could be a reason, but the fact that you didn't even try, combined with the fact that you did bring back a guy like a Quandre Diggs and a guy like an Al Woods, my thought was, okay, this moron actually thinks he can win with Drew Lock and quite possibly an offensive line that includes Stone Forsythe, Jake Curhan, Dakota Shepley, and no running backs. This guy is actually loading up for a run at things in 2022 with these obvious holes and having no urgency whatsoever to actually address those holes. But I don't think that's actually what's going on here. I find it very hard to believe that Carroll, even in his hubris and arrogance, would ever think that replacing Russell Wilson with Drew Lock would fix everything. That takes a special amount of stupidity to do that I just don't think he has. He's an idiot, but he's not stupid. I don't think he's actually thinking about going all in on defense and winning with the 32nd ranked offense because his defense is just going to be that good. So, looking at the nature of these contracts we're handing out and some of the ones that we already have, trying to put together what the, let's call it a 3-year plan might be. I'm not saying I'm on board with it, but let's try to put it together. So, 2022, the Seahawks are currently sitting on something like, if you include the Quandre Diggs money and the Sidney Jones money, they're sitting on like $22 million in space, maybe 20. Somewhere between 20 to 22, I would guess. So, my best guess right now is that 2022 is going to be a throwaway year. You're not trying to compete. You're not trying to win. You're going to take your 4 or 5 win season on the chin, and you're going to go forward from there. And as for what you do in 2023, I think that kind of depends on what your plan is this draft. So I don't know if the Seahawks plan to get a quarterback in this draft or a quarterback in the 2023 draft. The 2023 draft has quarterbacks that are actually going to be consensus top 5 guys. Now, I'm not saying I like them that much. I don't know about Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Those guys are going to be guaranteed top 10 picks unless they completely fall apart this year in college. So that draft class is a lot better. But either way, I think what you're I think what you're doing in 2022 is you're just letting Drew Lock get the crap kicked out of him. You're letting Drew Lock get the crap kicked out of him behind your offensive line that includes guys like Forsyth, Curhan, maybe Dakota Shepley, maybe Pierre-Olivier Lestage, maybe rookies who may have promise but are going to make mistakes. But there's no attempt to make that offense good. There's no attempt to make that offense anything more than a team that leads the league in rushing attempts and maybe keeps turnovers down, but is ultimately not really able to score points. So I think that you are seeing this team do a rebuild. After yesterday when we got Quandre and Al Woods, I didn't know what we were doing. But my best guess is that this 2022 season is a throwaway. I think we have committed, and I've been trying to figure out how that fits in with the Quandre Diggs and Al Woods signings, because those signings tell me we're trying to compete. So what I have is, if you take a look at the 2023 salary cap, right now we have over almost $135 million in cap space. And that may include the money that LJ Collier is never going to see, the $11.5 million. I don't know if that's included or not. And by this point, either you take a rookie quarterback in this draft like Matt Corral or Malik Willis, and by this year he's the full-time starter, or you get your guy in the next draft. But either way, if you take a look at this roster, you will see that because of some of the contracts that we've acquired and given out this offseason, there is probably going to be a pretty good team ready to rock around this rookie quarterback. It'll be the second year of the Will Dissly contract. It'll be the final year of the Shelby Harris contract. Final year of the Al Woods contract. Noah Fant will probably be on his player option year for less than $7 million. Jordan Brooks will be in the last year of his cheap deal. Darrell Taylor will still be on a very cheap deal. Dwayne Eskridge will be on a cheap deal. Damian Lewis will be on a cheap deal. And not only do you have all these guys with at least some degree of promise, you're hoping that guys like Stone Forsythe and Jake Curhan can prove to be worthy of starting in the NFL. You're also shedding some guys at this point. Guys like Carlos Dunlap, who at this point is going to be 35 plus. Poona Ford will be a free agent. Maybe you're moving on from him. Maybe you're moving on from him now, honestly. It depends on where you see him in this defense. Chris Carson will be completely off the books outside of his small void year hit. Mayo will be completely gone. Sidney Jones, he only signed the 1-year deal, so he'll be gone. So at this point, Drew Lock, you won't owe him anything because he'll be a free agent. So you still have a team that is pretty competitive and capable of supporting a good rookie quarterback or a good second-year quarterback who didn't play very much the previous year. Because by this time, you will have found out if Stone Forsythe and Jake Curhan are any good. If they get Drew Lock killed, then okay, we weren't planning to have Drew Lock be good anyway, so now we know we need to go get better guys. But if those guys, Forsythe and Curhan, end up being good for you in 2022, then you can go, okay, we've got 2 really cheap starting tackles for their 3rd year to protect our new quarterback. So you're basically using Drew Lock as like a crash test dummy. You're testing to see how the crash goes. If the crash goes well and the dummy doesn't get damaged that much, then you know what you have is working. But if the crash test dummy gets destroyed, then you know, oh, we got to change things up before we let our next quarterback take the wheel. And if you get the right quarterback, be it CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, whoever it is you get, if you get really lucky, in 2023, you will be able to combine a roster full of some young, interesting players and a ton of cap space to compete. However, go to 2024 if not. So let's say you don't get really lucky with that quarterback in 2023. Maybe he's good, but he's not ready. Maybe he needed some time to play. Maybe he needed that first year of being a full-time starter. Maybe he'll be more of a second year or arguably third year bloomer. Or maybe you see something from him so bad you give up and you go get another quarterback in the 2024 draft. Either way, if you take a look at the situation in 2024, there's very little money committed. The only guys you're really kind of stuck with, and you could find a way out, but you're probably stuck with Tyler Lockett and Jamal Adams. You may be stuck with Lockett and Adams. Everybody else, you can move on from. Now, Dixon, I don't know why you would want to, but Disley, supposedly, his contract is basically a 2-year deal. This last year actually will cost us nothing to move on from. I know it says on Spotrac 3.1, apparently we can release him after 2023 and owe him nothing. It's almost like a club option year in a way. If that is true, then it's very painless to move on from Disley if he doesn't earn that $10 million for this final year. And you look at the other contracts we gave out, guys like a Quandre Diggs. Okay, Quandre Diggs, he got a 3-year deal, and we haven't seen the full details of that contract yet, but we do know it's front-loaded. Apparently, only $12 million are in that 3rd year. So the first 2 years are actually bigger than the 3rd year. So what that means is I'm guessing that if Quandre Diggs shows signs of slowing down and the injury does affect him, or maybe he just gets old, you can move on from Quandre Diggs going into 2024 to clear most of that, I guess, $12 million cap hit in 2024. It might only be a couple million. So you now have maximum freedom to spend like crazy to build around your young quarterback, be it the guy you took in 2022, 2023, or if push comes to shove and you completely whiff on your rookie quarterback the previous 2 years, maybe 2024. So it almost feels like there's a little bit of a 2-year plan that is mitigated for the possibility of you finding another diamond in the rough at quarterback, like you did with Wilson in 2012. So you have some pieces on the roster in 2023, just in case that happens to be the year when you've got a new quarterback ready to rock. be it Matt Corral, Malik Willis, Caleb Williams in 2024, whatever. But if it doesn't come out that way and you have to push everything back to 2024, what you have in 2024 should be maximum salary cap flexibility. You are going to have to add like DK Metcalf's contract to this. Maybe Jordan Brooks gets extended by this point. But it's not a terrible plan. The main problem I have is the people who are trying to implement it, Pete and John. But if you look at it like this, if you look at the Will Dissly contract and the Quandre Diggs contract as 2-year deals, and then you say, okay, that means Al Woods, Quandre Diggs, Will Dissly, these are all just like little 2-year stopgaps to give us some viability potentially in 2023 and also give us maximum flexibility in 2024. It kind of comes together. It's not so bad. Again, I just wish we had a new front office implementing this plan, but I feel like unless we see something massively different over the next couple of days, the Seahawks have basically admitted 2022 is going to be bad. We're going to be really bad in 2022. We're going to throw Drew Lock out there to be our crash test dummy before we get our actual driver behind the wheel. And that driver, since we had apparently no interest in Deshaun Watson, almost certainly is going to be somebody we pick in this draft or the next draft. So that's the best way I can put it right now. 2022 is a punt, but guys like Quandre Diggs, guys like Al Woods have a chance to be part of a meaningful, good Seahawks team in 2023. That's why you keep them. That's why you give them money despite nominally tanking 2022. It's not actual tanking, but it's an acknowledgement that, hey, we have $40 million dead because of the Russell Wilson trade. Let's chill out this year. That's what I see right now. If I see something different the next few days, I'll talk about it. But as of right now, I think this is a rebuild, and you're trying to give yourself some flexibility to still be competitive in 2023 if you hit the jackpot on the quarterback. So get ready for Drew Lock or an equivalent in 2022. At this point, it doesn't matter to me. If it wasn't going to be Deshaun Watson, I don't really care who the quarterback is. I don't think there's anybody you can get who's a significant upgrade over Drew Lock to where I actually care. That actually can get you to the playoffs, get you to 11 wins. I don't see it. If you did want to make a little bit of a QB upgrade just so DK Metcalf wouldn't get fed up, we'll talk more about that later, but you might be able to make a play on guys like Matt Ryan and Jared Goff. Maybe you could even get the team that you're dealing with to pay you to take those quarterbacks. So we'll talk more about that later. But this is the best I got. Let me know what you think. I still hate the Dissly contract. Still kind of feel like I would rather let Brian Monet take over nose tackle instead of Al Woods. But it's, on paper, it's not the worst plan I've ever heard. See you guys later. Go Hawks.